I'm Serena Thomas. I'm the Program Director at Homeward Alliance. Thank you all so much for joining us during this month of April, which is National Volunteer Month. As most of you know, Fort Collins enjoys a very generous community when it comes to volunteers. In fact, the state of Colorado ranks number 7 in the nation per capita for volunteers, and Fort Collins actually ranks number 3 according to the Peace Corps, which is awesome. And we as an organization have benefited greatly from this compassion, and that's what we wanted to highlight in this presentation. To kick us off, I want to introduce David Root, our Executive Director. He started with Homeward Alliance as an intern and became our director in 2014 and has done nearly every job in between since then. In addition to leading our organization, he represents Homeward Alliance on multiple task forces. He's on the board of directors for Outreach Fort Collins, as well as the statewide HMIS Collaborative Board and the Fort Collins City Managers Homelessness Advisory Committee. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Serena. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's really great to see some familiar faces and some people who I haven't seen in quite a while. So thank you so much for joining. I'm going to start out by just giving an overview of the history of volunteerism within Homeward Alliance, formerly Homeless Gear, and then how how things have evolved over the years, and then a little bit about this last year and some of the things that volunteers continue to do to assist throughout the pandemic. Some of you might know, and actually many of you know our founder, Ken John, that we were founded by a volunteer. So from our very beginning, we have been a volunteer-driven and for a long time volunteer-led organization in terms of day-to-day operations. It was mentioned that I took over in 2014 as executive director, and I started working with Homeward Alliance as an intern in then Homeless Gear in 2012. But Ken ran the organization as a volunteer from the founding in May of 2008 until May of 2000. I'm sorry, not May, until I took over in 2014. So I think one of the things that I think is important to emphasize from the perspective of a nonprofit is that almost no nonprofits get that head start to have an unpaid executive director focused purely on building out the program and services, as opposed to having to worry sort of inwardly about the administration of the organization, is part of why we've been able to grow as fast as we've been able to grow. And at the same time, Ken and then other staff members, some of our earlier staff members, myself included, but also our first volunteer coordinator, Eileen Corbiere, who was also a part-time volunteer, part-time staff member. Volunteers really built most of our early programs and some of our more recent programs from the ground up. Excuse me, I actually couldn't tell you exactly how many programs we have right now because some of them were sort of lumped into our COVID response, but it's somewhere around 15 programs. And several of them were started by volunteers, and several of them continue to be run by volunteers. Our founding program, our distribution program, which is our basic needs program through which we collect and distribute supplies to people experiencing or at risk of homelessness, was started by Ken. That was the original program. What was formerly known as our Children in Need program. We're still sort of working on the branding of that, but what still exists as our family resource fairs and sort of our basic needs assistance for children was also developed by volunteers. Ken and a McKinney-Vento liaison who worked at the Poudre School District joined together to form and start hosting regular supply distribution events, which eventually became full-blown resource fairs for families who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Our first housing program for individuals, our Housing First initiative, was launched through a volunteer and sort of partnership with Homeward 2020, One Village, One Family, which has also evolved into a broader program that provides a wide range of housing-related support to families, was launched by a volunteer. the dedicated navigator program through which we help people apply for benefits, and has now expanded into a staffed program that that not just helps people apply for benefits, but also helps people with housing applications, with getting documents like birth certificates and IDs to be able to get into housing or to get employment. That was started by a group of volunteers, including Sister Mary Alice and Ann Wilburton and several others who might be on the call. I haven't looked at the full list of everyone who's on the call. Our Hand Up program similarly was launched by Sister Mary Alice and an employee at New Belgium Brewing Company. And obviously that has now evolved into a very large staffed employment program that provides a wide range of services to people with the goal of helping them obtain and maintain employment. And then two programs that we have right now continue to be run and powered completely by volunteers, and we will get more into that later. But our bike program and our mobile laundry program, I just want to highlight as two current programs that were conceptualized, brought to fruition, and continue to be operated by volunteers exclusively. In fact, I was just telling this to our staff. I was on a call with our auditor today. And one of the questions that the auditor had for us looking at our financial statements from last year was, how did you spend so little money on your bike repair program? And the answer to that question was, because we have volunteers who do everything in that program and they get a lot of things donated. So I don't know if that made Mark blush or anything, but that was an actual question that we got from our auditor about 30 minutes before this call, and just speaks to the incredible service that our volunteers provide.
That's a perfect answer.
There you go. So the service of volunteers, of course, does not just extend to creating programs. Volunteers are the lifeblood of many of our programs. The Murphy Center is probably our most tangible example of where we see volunteers operating on a day-to-day basis, providing a wide range of services. And I think we sort of think about volunteerism at the Murphy Center in association with all of our other programs, because many of our programs are based at the Murphy Center. So many volunteers, for example, who volunteer for the Dedicated Navigator program might think of themselves as Murphy Center volunteers, and that's fine because that's where the service is provided, but it's actually a totally separate program. So overall, volunteers are such a crucial part of our organization. I don't know the exact sort of calculation between hours served on an annual basis, but usually it's the equivalent of about 8 full-time employees worth of volunteer service on an annual basis provided to Homeward Alliance. And what we've been able to leverage that service into is just an unbelievable and broad range of supports for people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness, and far more than we were ever able to do prior to the launch of Homeless Gear, prior to the launch of each of our programs. The last thing I'll touch on before I pass it back to Serena is that our volunteer program did not stop during the pandemic. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, some of the changes that we implemented during COVID to our volunteer program will be lasting changes that allow us to expand our volunteer base beyond the individuals and families who were volunteering with us before, and attract new volunteers. Maybe so many younger volunteers began volunteering with us this past year, as people who were over 65 or had risk conditions had to step back for very good reason. And so our hope and expectation in the future is that we will both have the return of our long-term volunteers, not all of whom are over 65. I didn't want to give that impression either, of course, but that we will have the return of our long-term volunteers in addition to the continuation of the volunteers who have stepped up during the pandemic. And in particular, actually, I would note some volunteers who have health expertise and or are healthcare professionals who were able to volunteer during the pandemic or offer their expertise during the pandemic in specific areas. But more specifically to our volunteer program during COVID, we shifted rapidly right at the start of the pandemic away from a model that was reliant on volunteers because we temporarily at least lost the vast majority of our volunteers. But as I alluded to a moment ago, we were able to recalibrate quickly thanks to a massive outpouring of support from the entire community. And volunteers quickly began doing or started anew doing many of the things that they had been doing before. We created as safe basically as we could working conditions, provided personal protective equipment to all of our volunteers, and created new opportunities that were in safer spaces, that were isolated from physical contact with guests, staff, or other volunteers. And our volunteers and many of you on this call just adjusted amazingly to the changes that we sort of implemented and forced on you, that were forced on all of us because of the pandemic. And because of that, we were able to continue to provide services during the height of the pandemic. We were able to maintain services without any interruption for really the entire year. And for the 3 months that we co-located our services out of the Northside Aslan Center with the overnight shelters, we were able to maintain operations at the Murphy Center as well, in large part because of the continued service of our volunteers. So I'm going to end by saying thank you so much to all of you who volunteer for us on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on an annual basis. If you've never volunteered with us before, I sincerely hope you will consider volunteering. Truly, thank you for your service to our organization and the people we serve, most importantly.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. Thank you, David. We did want you to hear directly from some of our volunteers. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we will ask them each 3 questions about their experiences volunteering, starting with David. If you want to go first, please introduce yourself. Give us your name, city and state where you were born in, how long you've been volunteering in general, not just with Homeward Alliance, and what type of volunteering you do.
Sure, I'm David Wasson, and I am originally from El Dorado, Illinois, way down in the southern tip of Illinois near the Shawnee National Forest. I've been volunteering with the Homeward Alliance and other organizations for the past about 4 years. And I've worked with some other organizations as well, Colorado Mountain Club. I volunteered for 30 some odd years with them. And but currently I'm at the Murphy Center at the front desk and working particularly in the locker room and in the mail room. And then I do some sorting of gear. A small quantity compared to some other gear sorters.
Which leads us to Amy and Tim. Amy, do you want to go first and then Tim can follow?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Amy. I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've been volunteering for over 20 years. Volunteering here now for about 7 months. I've volunteered with Girl Scouts, the City of Fort Collins, the Sava Center, kind of a range of everything from fundraising to organizing volunteers to set up and clean up after events and now sorting.
Tim?
I'm Tim Anderson. I grew up in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I started my volunteering at various churches where I was a member, first on different committees, and then I ended up on a property committee at one church, which is building maintenance, and I enjoyed that. And sometimes it's hard to get volunteers, so I ended up doing a lot of the maintenance myself, which I enjoyed. And did that. And then when I moved here to Fort Collins, I got in with Disabled Resource Services, which is helping those who can't do maintenance of their home or their own. So I did that. and now here I am.
And if you notice that both Tim and Amy are from Minneapolis, do you want to tell us why?
Well, Amy follows me wherever I go. It's my favorite daughter.
All right, Mark.
Sure. My name is Mark Brewer. I'm born in Syracuse, New York. I don't know why you're not seeing me. I'm up in the corner, but born in Syracuse, New York. My wife and I have lived out here in Fort Collins for 10 years. And I would say that I've been volunteering my whole adult life in one form or another. But I've been volunteering specifically for Homeward Alliance for the past 5 years. I'm involved with the bike repair program primarily. I'd say that's my primary role. And I'd say secondarily, I have a truck and a trailer and tools. So I'm often called on to pick things up, move things, drop things off, and fix things. So I'm always happy to jump in and help with those projects as well. Thank you.
All right, the second question, we'll go in the same order with David, Amy, Tim, and Mark. Why did you choose to volunteer at Homeward Alliance and help people who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, I first connected with homeless gear when I heard the mission of donating used camping gear and the like for people who were living on the street, homeless or near homeless. I thought, what a great idea. And so I called the guy up whose name was on there, Ken John, and I took stuff over to his garage, and we put stuff up in the containers in his garage on shelves. It was, I guess, where things started. But he was a neat guy, and I talked with him a bit, and so we stayed connected through time. But I then connected with Hand Up and hired some people in the business I was managing, and it was a real success as far as a win-win for the company, but also for the individuals that came on board. So I really appreciated the people that I worked with, Daniel in those years gone by, and Linda. They just did an outstanding job. But I choose to work with Homeward Alliance today because it's again that mission of the one location place for services for folks who need the services of being homeless or near homeless. I remember listening to Sister Mary Alice Murphy give a talk around what a difference that made in lives, and she fought for that. She championed that concept, and so to see that in the works at the Murphy Center today, it's a life changer for people. So Homeward Alliance just makes it easy to volunteer. It's a good system, and it's a lot of good people to work with too. So it's just a worthwhile organization.
Well, thank you. Amy, do you want to go?
Yeah, I've been aware of Homeward Alliance since it started and through the name change. Have always respected this organization and watched how it's grown, but kind of done it with a lot of thoughtfulness and preparedness. Also, homelessness issues are things that I've been watching for a lot of years, and it's stressful to watch, and it's complicated, and it just needs a lot of hands and good power behind it to make a difference, I think. And then Serena knew that I had given up on another long-term volunteer slot, so asked if I wanted to give it a try. So here I am.
And Tim?
Well, I came in, I made a statement earlier, my daughter follows me wherever I go. That's wrong. I follow her because I was volunteering to visit shut-ins at my church, but then COVID set in and we couldn't do anything. So Amy knew I was wandering around a loose cannon, and she invited me to help her, and now here I am.
And they are an awesome cube sorting duo, right? Tuesdays. And Mark?
Sure. Well, my wife first encouraged me to volunteer at Homeward Alliance because she volunteered a year before in the One Village, One Family program. And so once I started, I kind of quickly asked them, like, hey, could I just fix bikes for people? Because that's what I'm good at and that's what I know. And they were like, really? You'd come here and fix bikes? So sure. So that's what we did. So most of my volunteering has been focused on the bike repair program. And really, we all see, folks kind of struggling with bikes that are not safe and not in good repair because they don't have the resources to get the bike fixed, but yet they rely on it as their primary transportation. And of course I saw that and I said, well, if I can kind of help folks out one bike at a time, that's what I'd like to do. And that's primarily what I've been doing for the past 5 years.
So when we talk about the bike repair program, that is one of our programs that is fully volunteer run, with Mark leading the whole program. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Certainly welcome.
And then our last question, David, if you want to start, tell us about a time when you knew you were making a difference for those we serve, or you learned something about yourself and the importance of helping others.
This made me reflect back the question and think about some things. And I remember one time when I was in the locker room and I was staffing, sitting in there, just helping a couple of guests when we could have 2 people in there at a time. And I overheard a conversation, and a woman was working to try to lift the spirit of another guest, another woman in the locker room. And they were talking back there just across the space of the lockers. And I listened to that conversation, and the one woman, it was impactful to hear what she was saying and what she was doing, listening to the other. And then she offered, the one woman that was offering the hand offered to give her a piece of clothing. And I thought to myself, goodness sakes, I couldn't imagine being in the situation. But anyway, that conversation had an impact on me. And so over time, I've really tried to make it a point to listen to guests, when I'm with them, to listen to what they have to say, and to try to care in a genuine way, and to understand them, and to let them know that I am hearing what they say. So that's what I try to do.
And you do it very well, David. You're very appreciated at the front desk. Thank you. Amy?
I think one of the times that it hit most was you're going through the huge, generous piles of coats that have been donated, but also then sorting those into sizes, but really looking at the jackets and the fabric and the construction and deciding, is this helpful to someone that is maybe sleeping in their car or outside in the weather all winter long? And just really makes you think how wonderful to be able to pass that on.
And it's not necessarily a way we look at our clothing, right?
Right.
Tim?
Well, for me, anytime I volunteer to help people, the biggest thing that I bring home with me is I see what their conditions they have, what their health is, or their surroundings, and it makes me realize how blessed I truly am.
Thank you. And Mark? Sure.
I would say, from the beginning of the bike program, it isn't as if one individual or one or two individual, people stand out. It's that, every week we were, seeing people and spending time with them. As it takes 20 or 30 minutes to work on a bike, sometimes longer, an hour or two. And frequently the guests would enjoy kind of standing with us and helping with the bike and talking with us and telling us their life story. And over the years, I've gotten to know many individuals, guests at the Murphy Center and others who we've served, and have kind of fostered friendships with them, and have seen them kind of on their progression, being helped by the Murphy Center in many different ways. The bike repair is just one of them. And many of those individuals who I met in 2016 or 2017 are now housed and working, and maybe have a car instead of a bike as well as their bike. And it's rewarding to me to see that. And in a small way, it's rewarding to me to know, like, oh, I fixed that guy's bike in 2017, and we did this and that, or we helped get this guy a bike, and he used that bike to go to work, and he maintained that job, and like, there's a continuum of services that we're all providing, and it's nice to be one gear in that system.
That's very true, and that's something that we as staff get to see, right? We get to walk along the journey with our guests, and some of our volunteer positions give that possibility also. So thank you, volunteers, for presenting and telling us about your experiences. For everyone else on the call now, whether you're a current volunteer or looking to learn more, hopefully that gives you some insight about the opportunities we have. But we did want to talk a little bit more about what we have as our needs as an organization. We have opportunities for volunteers that are both guest facing, like what Mark and David were talking about, as well as behind the scenes, which is what Amy and Tim do, sorting in our cubes. We have opportunities that are ongoing, weekly, consistent shifts. And we also have opportunities that are one-time events. If you feel like you just want to volunteer once a quarter on a Saturday. We have leadership positions, and we also have some more boots on the ground positions. To give specific examples, like what Amy and Tim help us with, is the incoming donations that come into the Murphy Center need to be sorted and inventoried and stored, because they are what stock our gear room and our kids' clothing closet, and what we store back up in the storage units. If you would like to work at the Murphy Center, you can help us serve breakfast, coffee, and snacks to our guests 7 days a week in the mornings. You can work at the front desk helping with mail, laundry, or even something a bit deeper, like meeting individually with guests to help them sign up for public benefits. We would train you on all that, and you would actually help guests become document ready on their way to applying for housing. When we have events, we always need help setting up and hosting and tearing down. Some of our upcoming events are our Women's Health Day. We have a family resource fair where people will be bringing their kids and shopping for clothes for their kids and meeting other service providers. We are also going to be hosting a guest summer picnic at the Murphy Center. As Mark was talking about, the bike repair team needs volunteers to help perform basic maintenance on bikes. They do this both on a regular basis at the Murphy Center, and they also go out into the community with their trailer that you saw in some of the photos on some evenings. And we will also be starting up again this summer our mobile laundry team, where we actually have a trailer with a washer and dryer, and we take it to various locations and help families do their laundry. So we have lots of options. So if you're interested, please reach out to us to learn more. We also do have an update about our volunteer program in general. I have been in the role of volunteer program manager since July, but it's been sort of a part-time role for me, since we did cut back a little on our volunteer opportunities during the pandemic, because we wanted to keep everyone safe. But things are opening up now, and we know our volunteers need and deserve a full-time program manager. So we have hired a wonderful lady named Amy Madden. She's actually starting on Monday, but we asked her to join us here today so you all could meet her. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to working with all of you. I am from Fort Collins. I grew up here. I have been in marketing and events and most recently social media forms of marketing. But for the last 25 years, that's been my career. I'm a CSU Ram, so I'm considered a townie. And so I am very thrilled to be working with a local organization who does such good things in town. A big thank you already to all of you who do what you do, and I can't wait to learn from you and ask you questions and pick your brain. In addition to my career, I'm in musical theater here locally and have been for a really long time, so that's kind of my hobby and my interest. And I have a daughter who's 11, and I am married 16 years now. And I because of being an event planner and a marketer, I have worked with a lot of different committees and volunteers. So I look forward to using what I can, what I know, but also I'm a constant learner, and I cannot wait to see what has been put in place and what things we can, get rolling together right away that you guys have already created and have been awesome at. So thank you for that kind welcome and introduction.
Thank you, Amy. We're looking forward to you on Monday.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you all for joining. I think we're gonna open it up to questions now for any of the staff or volunteers who spoke, or just general questions. You can also feel free to type them in the chat if you'd like. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask.
I was curious if the street outreach program is something you see coming back anytime soon.
David, you want to answer that one?
Yeah. Thank you, David. That's a longtime street outreach volunteer, David Way, who asked. Thank you for that question, David. I think that I think street outreach will just for a little context. The street outreach program was launched. Homeward Alliance, we launched our street outreach program in 2011, and that was launched by Ken John. The reason I didn't mention it is because it's not a currently active program, but that was also a program that was launched by volunteer, and also was volunteer driven for its entire existence. It's volunteers going out on street outreach at night, looking for people experiencing homelessness, sharing resource information, and providing basic needs assistance. We scaled back the program after the launch of Outreach Fort Collins, which is a staffed outreach program that's out now 6 days a week from 8 to 7 p.m. They're only not out on Sunday, and so we had reduced it to Sundays only. And then we stopped doing street outreach at the onset of the pandemic for safety reasons, for health reasons. So that's the context. We are not sure about whether we will relaunch it or how we will relaunch it in Fort Collins. I actually think there's a much greater likelihood that we will launch volunteer street outreach in Loveland in the nearer future. That's been the internal discussion, given given the fact that there is a street outreach team in Fort Collins and there is no street outreach team in Loveland. And we also have some new employees who are going to be boots on the ground in Loveland. So we're looking at different models of, and David, you'll recognize this because we did do this during the day shifts for a while, and also some of the evening shifts where we had a staff member out with a volunteer. So we're looking at that kind of model, either in Fort Collins, but more likely in Loveland in the short term. So I think, the short answer to your question is yes, probably, but probably in Loveland first.
There was a question in the chat for Amy. Will you accept CU Buff volunteers?
Just kidding.
She's going to have to because we've got some at our home too.
Sorry, I was just reading that, so I had to unmute myself. That is hilarious. My sister is a CU Buff, and my husband's a Wyoming Cowboy, so there's a lot of friendly rivalry. But yes, the answer is yes.
There was a question about. Oh, go ahead, Serena. You can read it.
Okay, I was going to say, you were talking about who to contact to discuss opportunities. So I would say contact me. So you spell my name, Serena, Serena, and it's at homewardalliance.org. But it was Richard who asked that question, right? We can also reach out to Richard. I'm assuming we have your email address from registering for this, so we can remember to reach out to Richard. Let me write that down.
Also want to just add just a quick thought related to volunteer opportunities, and that's that things change for us as an organization in terms of how we operate at the end of April. May 1st is basically the cold weather season for us, is November 1st through, well, sometimes October 1st, but we have different operations November 1st through April 30th. And so when I mentioned boots on the ground in Loveland, part of that is because we're able to deploy staff who are attached to seasonal activities down to Loveland and throughout the county at other locations more than we could have for the last 6 months. So that's why street outreach and things, that's why something like street outreach becomes a possibility in Loveland sooner rather than later. And yeah, again, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have any questions.
All right, if there are no questions, we would like to announce the winners of our random 3 drawings for a hoodie, a Homeward Alliance hoodie or t-shirt. The winners are, and I'm sorry, I'm really sorry if I mispronounce your names, okay? Susan McQuitty, did I get that right? Susan, if you're on, unmute yourself.
You certainly did. Thank you very much.
All right. And then we have Fred Schreckringer.
That's me.
Did I say it right?
You came close.
Tell me how to say your name.
Schreckinger.
Schreckinger. All right. Thank you. And Julie Fair. Julie, are you still on? And unmute yourself. Oh, there she is.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah, wow. Awesome.
So you can have a hoodie or a t-shirt, and I say just for the 3 of you, please email. I'll give you the address now. It's Mandalee, and she will help you get the right, whichever one you want, and the right size, and make arrangements. So if you could, would it be easier, Mandalee, to give you a phone number?
Yes, that would work. I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay. All right. Congratulations. We love our hoodies. Most of us are probably wearing a hoodie or sweatshirt right now.
I'm wearing a hoodie, and I'm also wearing a t-shirt, and yeah. I probably have 6 of these. So I have paid for all of them. I want to just clarify, but I have a lot of them.
I don't see anything in chat yet.
True. I think Mandalee will get it in there. Or
there it is.
There we go. It's her email address and her phone number. All right. Well, thank you again. I think that concludes our program. We just want to thank you again for joining us. I have had the privilege of volunteering and working with volunteers and managing volunteers for over 15 years. I absolutely love them for their selflessness and their compassion. So even though we have a new community programs manager, volunteer manager, you will not be rid of me because I will be lurking around forever. All right, so hopefully I'll get to work with all of you in the near future. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.